Kaylee Cuoco and Sam Claflin star in the MGM Plus original series, Vanished. When the man Alice loves disappears on a train to the south of France, every romantic memory becomes evidence. Every intimate detail, a potential threat. She thought she knew everything about him, but she may not even know his real name. 4-part thriller Vanished premieres February 1st on MGM Plus. Finding the truth is a dangerous affair.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome to the Life You Love podcast. We're your hosts, Grace Lemire and Erin Convertini. This podcast is for the dreamers and the doers, for the women who want to create a life they genuinely love waking up to. We believe that life's short, so let's build one we love. Welcome back to another episode of the Life You Love podcast. This is our monthly bonus Q&A episode. We release these on the last Friday of every single month, and we typically pull these questions from Spotify. You guys leave questions on all of our normal episodes, so we usually pull the best 4 or 5 and bring them into a monthly Q&A episode, which you guys have been loving lately, and we love filming them. We love answering your questions. So as you're listening to the podcast in future episodes, definitely feel free to leave questions, and we'll try to pull them into these monthly bonus Q&A episodes. So we have 5 questions here that we want to get to today, some on business, some on life, some just miscellaneous questions that you guys have been asking us. So let's get right into the first one. This one says, unsure if this is relatable, but I'm in a state of burnout when I'm just focused on getting by and unable to visualize goals, dreams, or an ideal version of me. I work in corporate.
This is absolutely relatable. Let me just say that. I feel like so many people are in this position where everyone can say left and right, well, you need to know who you want to become and where you want to go and what are you working towards? And is what you're doing now contributing to where you want to go? But if you can't think about who you want to become or what your dreams are, or where you want to go, that's very defeating to hear, because it's okay, no, when I tell you I'm so burnt out, I don't even know what direction I'm going in. That is very much relatable. That's how I felt, I would say, pretty much all of last year, majority of last year, because I was in a place where I was just living in survival mode. And so I didn't really know what my goals were anymore. I didn't know what my vision was. I didn't know where I was headed. And I think I've had seasons of life where I feel that way. And I forget how exactly my therapist worded it to me, but she was like, well, when you're in survival mode or you're doing so much, even if it's not coming from a place of maybe you have too much on your plate or you're not fulfilled or whatever, and you're in a place where you're in burnout and you're just in survival mode, it's very hard to think to think beyond that and to dream, because dreaming and thinking into your future just requires a whole nother level of brain power that you likely don't have when your brain is so strapped. And I found personally that I had to slow down and find pockets where I could just do less, do nothing, do something different. That was a hard realization for me, because I wanted to do all of the things that I was doing, and I wanted to be able to do all of them really well. And also, just, I guess, live to my normal capacity. For me, it was my health that was dragging me down. And I wanted to be able to exist how I would when my health was not an issue. But I realized I'm so burnt out, I can't even think forward about my dreams and goals and what I'm trying to work on. So I need to be honest with myself about what my capacity looks like right now and honor that. And when I did that, when I took a step back on certain things to honor the capacity that I truly had for stuff, that's when my creativity started to come back. And I was able to think about, okay, what do I actually want out of life? How can I visualize the future? What are my goals? But it took me kind of figuring out what do I really need in this moment? And it was not trying to force myself to think harder and visualize my goals more when I was already burnt out.
Yeah, I definitely think that I've learned there are certain phases of life where you need to do less and certain phases of life where you need to do more. And I know you were just talking about this in a video the other day, where you were basically saying, I realized I didn't need to do less, I needed to do more. And that's definitely a phase of life. And it doesn't have to be every single phase of life. You're listening to this episode and you're like, no, doing more? Absolutely not. Like that's not the answer. I do need to take a step back and do less for a little bit. That's totally fine as well. But I've definitely realized there are certain periods of time where doing less is beneficial for getting me out of that state of burnout, but then phases of life where I'm not doing enough of the things that make me feel really fulfilled, and that's also contributing to a state of not even necessarily burnout, but just like not feeling great and kind of just going through the motions and not able to kind of look ahead and visualize my dream life, quote unquote.
Yeah.
I was listening to a podcast the other day where she said something that really stuck with me. She said, "You're not stuck, you're just low energy." And she wasn't talking about low energy from the point of like, okay, well, you're low energy because you're not nourishing your body, you're not sleeping well enough, or you're sleeping in super late, so that's making you feel groggy and tired. It was less of that, but it was more from the perspective of you're there's too many things in your life that are draining your energy, and there's not enough of the things in your life that are actually giving you energy. Because I do think that there's a lot in your life that actually gives you more energy than it takes. For example, when you hang out with a friend and this friend is very motivating and energetic and you love her energy and you leave that hangout feeling really good, versus going to see a friend and she's just gossiping and talking negatively and you leave that hangout feeling very drained. So what this person in the podcast episode was saying, she was like, you need to do an audit of all of the things in your life and what is draining your energy and what is giving you energy, and how can you put more of the things that give you energy back into your life. And she was also saying, when you feel very low energy, it's easier for small things to make you feel very overwhelmed because your energy is like very limited. And I definitely relate to this. I feel like the point in my 20s where I was the most quote unquote like burnt out, it was before I moved to Nashville, when I was living in Pittsburgh in my very first apartment, by myself. It was like a small 1-bedroom apartment. And I had terrible habits in that apartment. I've talked about this on the podcast before, but like could not keep the place clean. My apartment was a disaster all the time. And I felt like very burnt out in that phase of life. And what this girl in the podcast episode was saying, she was like, when you are already so low energy, even the thought of like cleaning your apartment overwhelms you because you have such little energy to work with. So I thought that was a good perspective too. Like maybe do an audit of what actually is draining your energy. If you work in corporate and maybe you're saying at a high level, okay, well, my job drains me. What actually about your job drains you? And how can we kind of like reconfigure some of those things to bring more into your life of things that give you energy?
Yeah, I think in that video that I made, what I was basically saying how I wasn't stressed from doing too little, because after it was like post surgery, I was like, I should take it easy, I should relax. And I had surgery at the beginning of October. And obviously I need to be careful physically. But what I found was I pressured myself, because I feel like so much online is like when you're burnt out, it's like, slow down, reduce your cortisol. Like, and I do think that there's, some validity in that argument of sometimes you are just doing too much and you do need to slow down a little bit. But I feel like then I felt pressured to be that way, when who I am as a human is I really like to do, like, all of my hobbies are doing something that is like stimulating my brain. My dad is the same way. I definitely get it from him. I like to be doing things. I don't like to just like sit and do nothing. I don't find that enjoyable or restful. And so I think sometimes doing something is actually more restful than not doing something, depending on the type of person that you are. And when I think about my energy and what gives me like joy, I think of it as like, I guess kind of like if there's like a bar in my head, that's how I view it. It's like a bar chart or something. And it's like, if I need if I need more energy, I either need to remove the energy suckers or add more things into my life that are energy givers. And in some seasons of life, you can't remove the energy suckers. Like, if work is draining your energy, you still have to show up to work. Like, that's just how it's going to be. Or if you have children or pets or, a home that you're cleaning and taking care of, like, yeah, you could hire a babysitter, hire a dog walker, have someone clean your house to try to, remove those energy suckers if that's really stressing you out or whatever it may be. But there's limitations on that. So I thought to myself, you know what? I'm someone who actually really likes to do. And when I think about the energy suckers, there's not many in my life that are really pulling on me, that I feel like are significantly weighing me down, that I want to outsource to somebody else. So to me, it actually seems like I'm doing not enough of the things that bring me joy. So I actually thought to myself, what brings me joy, or what used to bring me joy that I really would like to do, or what would make me feel, when you do something and you almost are just like, you get that like warm, fuzzy feeling inside. I'm like, what gives me that? And for me, it used to be like doing community service and volunteering for things. And so even in the last month and a half or so, I've started helping with like editing some content for a nonprofit that my friend runs. I just signed up to volunteer with this organization that decorates hospital rooms for kids who are going to have long-term stays in the hospital. And I was just telling Erin, I got to do my first one on the date this episode is going out. Actually, I am going to the hospital that day to do my first one, and I'm like so excited. And I got to talking with the woman on the phone who owns the organization. It's fully volunteer run. So she was like, yeah, if you could help with some content, like that'd be so great. So like now I get to serve there too. Like, and I've just found ways to bring that back into my life. And I will say, I've noticed since doing that, my creativity is coming back. I like am able to think differently. I'm feeling more joyful, more excited. I actually genuinely feel like I have more energy. Like I feel like I'm getting more restful sleep. Like I feel more energized throughout the day. I feel more myself. And so I think sometimes, I think for this person in particular, but anyone who's experiencing burnout, I would ask yourself, you know, am I doing too much of the energy suckers, or is there not enough energy givers in my life? And where can I reduce the energy suckers, and where can I increase the energy givers? And find, sometimes those energy givers require you doing things, like for me to volunteer at this organization, there's a lot of like prep work that has to go into every time you decorate a room, and then you're showing up and, spending an hour at the hospital or whatever. So it takes more time, right? But I leave feeling like recharged. So I think that's sometimes the little burnout equation.
I do think that most people operate better when they're busier. I think back to freshman year of college, first semester, freshman year, they pick your classes for you. So you can't like add or drop, like they pick your classes and your schedule. And they only gave me 4 classes on my schedule first semester. And I also didn't have a job right when I started, because I was like, okay, like we'll see how college goes. Like won't have a job. This was my first time in my life that I wasn't playing a sport. And I also wasn't involved in my sorority yet, because that doesn't start until like halfway through your first semester of college. And I was literally the worst version of myself that semester.
Yeah.
Like I was napping every single day. My diet was trash. I wasn't working out. I was procrastinating all of my like studying and homework and everything. And from the outside looking in, I had so much time to be exercising and doing my homework and eating nourishing foods, but I don't operate well when I'm not busy. That's what I learned that semester. So I got involved in my sorority. I got a job and I joined a intramural basketball league. And all of a sudden, I was like a way better student. I felt better. I was working out more, even though I had way quote unquote less time. So I do think like, yeah, ask yourself, are you more, I don't even want to use the word productive, but are you just a happier and like better version of yourself when you are filling your calendar intentionally with the things that, like you said, actually do light you up. But with that, let's go on to the next question. This one says, Grace, you mentioned in an earlier episode that you worked hard to be a more patient person. How did you do that? Has it been sustainable? I'd love to build that skill.
I love this topic, and unfortunately, I don't think it could ever be a full episode, but I love that we're answering this like as a Q&A question, because I feel like it's surprising for people who know me in my real life. They know I'm a very patient person, and I don't have a short fuse like at all. I think my fuse is very, very long actually. But I used to not be that way. I've never been an angry person, but I used to find myself I was more irritable, I guess is a good way to say it, where, I was not patient with myself. Like if I made a mistake, I would be really upset. Like if I dropped something on the floor and it broke or something, I was like immediately very like frustrated with myself. And if I was sitting in traffic and it wasn't moving, I would feel myself getting stressed out and anxious, overwhelmed, feeling frustrated. Or even I was never outwardly impatient to the point where, if I'm like waiting in a long line, that I'm like huffing and puffing and like wow, this line's taking so long, like I was never like that. But it was like an internal, I could feel like myself just getting like hot inside when I would do things like or feel impatient. And it was 2 years ago, back in 2024, when I was living in Massachusetts in my own apartment, I started to catch myself being impatient, and I really didn't like it. If I was driving somewhere, like I said, or if I, dropped something in my kitchen or whatever. And I just realized I'm like, I don't want to be this way as a person. And I also started to realize I really want to be a mom and a wife one day. And I was like, I don't want to be that way as a mom, where like my kid accidentally knocks something over in the house and I like am like, like I start to get really irritated because they're kids, right? And when I worked at a daycare, I used to tell all the kids, I'm like, messes are, we can clean them up. Like, oh, you spilled something. Okay, get some paper towels. Like there's a natural consequence to that. So when I started to really make it a priority to like shift this in 2024, some of the things that really helped me was, one, I started to ask, well, I guess there's a few things. One, remember natural consequences. I talk about this with kids a lot in like child psychology, but as an adult, like for example, if I drop something on the floor and I break it, like let's say I drop a glass on the floor and it breaks, the natural consequence is that I now have to clean the glass up. And now I'm down a glass. I maybe I just thought it was my favorite glass or whatever. Now I'm down one glass. That in itself is enough of a consequence to where I don't have to like lose my patience with myself and get like really upset about it. Like I'm already paying the consequence of having to pick up glass off the floor. Me being like really irritated with myself does not help. And I think that might be more like being hard on yourself, but I think it contributes to your patience that you have with yourself for things. The other thing I had to ask myself is like, what am I in a rush for? Like, where am I rushing to? And like, yeah, like what am I rushing? What's the purpose? And so when I'd be driving places, for example, if I got stuck in traffic, I would literally ask myself like, why is it so important that I get there 5 minutes earlier? And there was never really a good answer because again, what can I do in that situation to control the traffic? Nothing. So me being upset with myself just adds more stress and angst to the situation. And me being impatient is literally serving absolutely nobody. And there's really no good reason why I had to be there 5 minutes sooner rather than later. I would also realize like in that moment, for example, let's say I was running late to, or like, stuck in traffic on the way to dinner with my friends. I would just text them and say, hit traffic, going to be 5 minutes late. Okay. That in itself is a natural consequence enough because inherently, like most people do not really enjoy being late. It doesn't feel good to show up late to things. It's disrespectful of other people's time. That in itself is a natural consequence enough. Me getting upset now and impatient about the fact that there was traffic does not help with anything. But also the other thing that I did that I think sounds really weird maybe, but I think it was actually one of the most helpful things. Anytime I would feel myself getting impatient about something, like my dinner's not cooking fast enough, or I'm impatient with someone's telling a story and they're not getting the point fast enough for my liking, or, I'm waiting in a line or whatever it might be, I would literally say to myself, now if I'm in public, I would say it in my head, but at home, I would literally stand there, I would pause and I would go, okay. And I would literally do that. And I know it sounds so weird, but I started to do that with a bunch of things. And I genuinely think it helped me pause my brain and realize that there's really no reason for me to be impatient in that situation. So now, like, because when I tell you, like before, I use the example of dropping something on the floor because I was always rushing through life. And so this would happen a lot. Like I would, when you're rushing, then all of a sudden you spill your coffee and because you're making more mistakes. I was always rushing through life. So then I would make these I would drop things a lot and spill things and whatever, make a mess. And I would get so irritated with myself because then that would stop me from moving as fast as I wanted to. So I literally remember one time in my apartment in Massachusetts, I dropped something on the floor. It went everywhere. I don't even remember what it was. Everywhere. It was like on the cabinets, on the floor, everything. And I literally just stood there and I was like, okay. And I just grabbed my paper towels and I started cleaning it up. And in that moment, it was like something shifted and I started to realize that it really was it was never that deep. If I would get stuck in traffic, I would literally say, well, I'm in traffic. Okay. And something about verbally saying okay helped my brain shift. It sounds so small, but I would 100% try it. Or like if you work with kids and you're struggling with your patients there, just, like, okay, like this child does not want to listen. They don't want to go to nap time. Like, okay, that's the objective truth, the fact about the situation. My stuff is spilled on the floor. I'm stuck in traffic. The child isn't listening. Someone's not getting back to me in the time that I need. What's in my control? What's not? I'm going to say, okay, to the objective truth of the situation. And I'm going to deal with the natural consequence and move forward. And that helped me so much. And now I do feel like, to the point of, has it been sustainable? Yes. I genuinely feel like I am so patient now. Like, things do not bother me. Like, when they're taking a long time, like, of course there are things where I'm like, hey, we have to draw a boundary here now. I've been waiting in line for an hour type of thing. Like, for my appointment, that was an hour ago. Okay, come on. Those types of things. However, I feel like I'm a much more patient and calm person than I used to be. And I don't get frustrated with myself if I feel like impatient with myself.
How does PwC take your company to the leading edge? They bring the sharpest minds in tech to your team, so you can bring the ideas that will transform your business. They're passionate about your industry, so you can walk into any room with every advantage. And they're with you every step of the way, so you can know you're headed in the right direction. PwC builds for what's next, so you can get there now. Get started at pwc.com/us/leading edge.
Yeah, I definitely think on the topic of patience, it's not like you're a patient person or you're not a patient person. I do think it's something that you actively have to work at. And I don't think that anyone is just like, okay, I'm patient and I never struggle with it. Because you are going to have moments where your first instinct is to be annoyed, irritated, whatever it may be, when something's taking longer, you spill something, but it is just something that you need to actively work on all the time. I definitely have improved in this area too over the last couple of years. I notice it when I'm walking Bella. I feel like when Bella was a puppy, I would get very impatient and irritated. I'm like, come on, we gotta go home. I'm like tugging her back to the house, and she's just like, Mom, I want to walk. But unless it's cold. When it's cold, I'm still
You're
tugging
like,
her.
pack it up, Bella. Let's go.
Bella's the one that's tugging me. She's like, come on, we're it's way too cold out here. But yeah, you definitely have to work at it. I think the biggest thing for me was just realizing that it's only harming me by letting things get to me. And a lot of times you're feeling impatient because you're annoyed about the time that you're wasting for the thing, but then reframing that in your brain to, I'm actually wasting more time by letting myself get irritated. If I spill a glass on the floor and it takes me 5 minutes to pick up, okay, that's 5 minutes quote unquote wasted. If I let myself get irritated about it, now that's probably an hour wasted, because not only am I spending 5 minutes picking up the glass, but I'm not going to be creative, productive, focused on work, focused on whatever else I need to be doing, or just relaxing for the next hour, because now I'm all worked up about it. So I think that helps too.
I also had asked myself at one point, or realized, like, for example, because I think where people get impatient a lot of times, or where I did too, was if I was like running behind when I'm going to something, or if I'm sitting in traffic, or if I'm waiting in a long line at like the grocery store and stuff. And I was like, I actually need to take some like radical self-responsibility here and say, no, I'm going to be late to dinner now. If me hitting 5 minutes of traffic is something that is going to now make me 10 minutes late, babes, you were already running 5 minutes behind. It's not the traffic, it was you. Like, if you are gonna, because then that's where you start to get impatient, when you realize, oh, you're gonna be late. You're like, oh my gosh, like I want to get through this. I'm like trying to rush. Maybe just leave 5 minutes earlier. And I had to look at myself and be like, yeah, I feel, that I get impatient in those moments because I'm now cutting it too close, and that's then causing me to show up frustrated, or I'm getting impatient with my parents because I'm trying to explain something to them and they're not understanding. Instead of, I'm like, hold on a second, they're not understanding, they're also not having a good time too. They would like to understand faster. Like, if I'm trying to get them to understand something, it's my job to then say, okay, what part are you not understanding? Like, maybe I can help you understand it more. Like, I don't know, just everyone's living their life for the first time. And I think sometimes we try to just rush too much, or we expect so much out of people. We get impatient with other people. Like, I don't know, the person at the cash register who has the long line and is checking people out, and
yeah, she's frustrated too.
Pops over here is like, getting all like, irritated with her, whatever. She's stressed too. It's like, she doesn't want the long line. She doesn't want it. Like, I don't know. I just think to give some people some grace, and including ourselves. Okay. Next question is, I started hearing ads on the podcast. Did you guys get monetized?
Yay! Okay, I'm excited to talk about this.
I know.
Yeah, we did. We've been talking about this on the podcast in a couple of episodes because it's been like a huge milestone that we've been working on for so long. And I know we've broke this down on the podcast before, but if this is your first time hearing of it, this is what we mean by this. So if you are listening to the podcast, you will now hear in a couple of different spots along the episode, there will be ad breaks and you'll hear ads that are not spoken by us. They're like auto-generated ads. Kind of works similarly to if you watch a YouTube video and halfway through the YouTube video, a random ad pops up. It's the same thing. It's a monetization program. But in order to qualify for ads to be auto-generated into your podcast, you have to hit a certain number of consumption hours on a 30-day period. It was 10,000. And that's what we were talking about in a couple of our prior episodes. Like, we need to hit 10,000 consumption hours. This is our like big goal for 2026, blah, blah, blah. Well, it's so crazy how things work out because we did not hit our 10,000 consumption hour goal. But the first time that we were filming in 2026, we log into Spotify for podcasters and we find out that they lowered the threshold. It was like this pop-up that said, we're trying to bring more monetization opportunities for podcasters in 2026. We lowered the threshold to 2,000.
Guys, for context, we were at like 7,200, I think, consumption hours at our peak. Like, that's what we had gotten up to. We have been at 2,000 consumption hours for
like over a year.
Long time. So we go in there, we're like, oh my goodness, you just reduced the threshold by so much. That is like insane.
Yeah. 2,000 consumption hours, I think, would be like a couple hundred listens per episode. Like, we have been there for a while, but obviously we were still so excited about it because I feel like it's been something that we've been working on since spring of 2025. That's when they released the monetization program. That's the first time that they were like, okay, ads can be auto-generated. You just have to hit 10,000 consumption hours. So it's been a good 3 quarters of us being like, this is our number one goal with the podcast. We paused bringing guests onto the podcast because we just felt like with our episodes, we could more clearly or better predict whether the episode was going to be good or not, because we were like, we need all of our episodes to be really good to not like hurt our consumption hours. So we just felt like it was giving us a lot of like tunnel vision related to the podcast because it's the only thing that we were focused on. And we were like, once we hit our consumption hours, then we can focus on the next goal. So I'm really excited that we kind of hit that. And now we could take a step back and say, okay, what's our next goal?
Yeah. And it's exciting because we're also getting to a point too where, I mean, we've been doing this for over 2 years now without, what have we made, like $1,200 in the podcast total in 2 years? And mind you, I think it cost us like a few $100s to have our taxes filed. And so like we really haven't made anything, guys. I think we actually came out at like net zero by the end of like taxes and fees and all of that with what we've made. But of course we enjoy doing this week over week. And so in order for it to be a sustainable business, at some point we have to monetize it and start to earn something from it. So we wanted to get to the point where we had those ads from Spotify because it's a bit more passive. We do have to choose the ad slots, like where the spots that they go, but Spotify and their monetization program is selecting the ads that go on there. But we also want to work with partners the same way that we do on our own individual pages. Like, we want to bring brands that we think are really good brands to the podcast, that we think are going to be useful to you all. And we did land one, and I'm really excited about it. I'm not going to say what it is or anything, but
you guys will hear it.
Yeah, you guys will hear
episodes.
it. And I'm so excited because it's a product I've used for like 4 years, 3.5 years. Like, it was one of the first things that I got when I like really started to take my business seriously. So, and we use it for the podcast as well. So I'm really, really excited about it. And, I think that just getting monetized on the podcast through Spotify was also such an indicator of like, okay, this is working, like we're doing the right thing here, the podcast going in the right direction. And now we also feel more confident getting, sponsors where the ads are being read by us as well. So we are still playing around with it in Spotify. So if you guys have feedback about like where they're placed or things like that, let us know, because we don't really know. Like, we're going based off of what Spotify suggests, but
yeah, and I
we're
also
trying to
think
figure it
too,
out.
with like the auto-generated ads, it was it wasn't even necessarily that we were like, oh, we need to hit this threshold because we really need the money to come in. If you're a YouTube partner, like you're not making thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars off of the monetization program. Like realistically, we'll probably be making a couple $100s a month off of these like auto-generated Spotify ads. But it was almost just like the first hump that we needed to get over. Not even so much of like an ego boost, but just kind of like we are, like you said, we are on the right track. This is something that we could see ourselves doing long term. And obviously, from the brand partner perspective, when we are trying to get brand partners for ads that we will like read ourselves, if we can't even hit the threshold for auto-generated ads, what's going to make a brand partner want to work with us? So it was almost, again, just like that first initial hump that we needed to get over.
I think too, with like most businesses, there's like, you can only do so much with it when you're making $0. And I think it's really good to be scrappy with how you go about it and do what you can without, like we would not have invested thousands of dollars into growing the podcast or into our equipment. Like we have mics that are a couple $100 and, softwares and things like that we've invested in. But in terms of investing a significant amount of money for something that we didn't know was really going to work out, it was not something we wanted to do. But now that we're at a place where like once we can earn more from the podcast, we can reinvest it into things that maybe are, can grow the podcast. We want to start to record some episodes in studios when we can, so that the quality is better and that our social clips look better, and that we can, because that will help grow the podcast even more if we have better social clips and everything, better visuals, but also being able to invest it into things like, if we wanted to do some sort of online community, or if we wanted to try doing a trip again, or if we wanted to do like merch of some kind or some sort of product or whatever it might be, we have more capital to be able to take those risks and try different things to grow the podcast and grow the community here. But it's difficult to be able to justify doing that when you're literally earning $0. Like you're like, okay, yeah, I'm not going to put $10,000 into doing something for it to potentially generate nothing back, versus if you have capital to work with, you can do more. And so I'm excited for that. I'm excited for what we can do with the podcast, how we can grow it, and how we can better serve all of you that listen to it, because things take money, right? Be able to do stuff and to serve people, there's money involved.
Yeah, I'm so excited about it. I feel like this is the first time that we can really see kind of the light at the end of the tunnel and say, no, things are really starting to snowball for us. And we also have always viewed the podcast as a long-term thing. Like we have taken the last 2 years to really grow our skills as podcasters and get a little bit better and learn how to outline episodes and title episodes and really find what you guys are interested in. But we're only 2 years in, and it's really exciting to think like, okay, where are we going to be in 2 more years? Like it's really starting to snowball. So we're super excited about that. But let's do one more episode or one more question for this Q&A. This one is a little bit more on the career and business side. It says, how do you handle enjoying a balanced career where you make enough to travel and live your life without feeling selfish, lazy, or behind for not making work your sole focus?
I feel like this is a dilemma that comes up for a lot of people, especially for people who are like overachievers. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I'm an overachiever. Like if you're just one of those people who wants to strive to do more and you're very like driven with your accomplishments or ambitious. And I have felt this too, because I feel like I've talked about last year so much in this episode and the one that we just filmed earlier today that I'm like, oh, but last year when I was was struggling so much with my health, I had this weird feeling where I was like, okay, I earned more last year than I did the year prior, but yet I worked a fraction of the time, and because I physically could not. And I struggled a lot with this feeling of like, okay, this is basically what I worked for. I started a business 4.5 years ago because I wanted a life with time and location freedom. I wanted to be able to work when I wanted to and not work when I didn't want to. And there I was existing in that space and saying, okay, I actually am making enough to like live my life, to pay my bills, to keep myself going while working so little right now so that I can take care of my health, and I have the money to be able to take care of my health. And I had to spend tens of thousands on my health last year. So I was sitting there in this space just being like, oh my gosh, like I feel selfish with my time. Like I should be all this extra time I'm saving to relax and take care of my health, I should be doing more with that, or I should be working more. Like, I just need to push myself through. Like, I need to drag myself over to my desk and do this, or, whatever. And then I started to feel lazy, and I'm like, oh, like, no, you're not doing enough. Like, taking care of your health it's an excuse. Like, meanwhile, I'm literally like sitting on the couch and my legs are numb. I'm like, no, this is not an excuse. Like, you physically are not in a place to be able to do this right now. And I struggled with that. And I was like, what in the world? Like, I'm sitting here pressuring myself to do more with my career. Yet I kind of have the dream situation right here. I've worked for years to be in this position. Why am I guilting myself over it? And what I had to realize was I had to go back to why I started doing the thing to begin with. Whether it's a corporate job that you have, a business, whatever it may be, why did you start doing it? For me, again, it was I wanted time and location freedom and the ability to increase my income at my own pace. And there I was, after 4 years of working toward that, reaping the rewards of it. Okay. I had to shift my mindset to say, like, I'm not selfish or lazy or anything for having this balance and this time to be able to do both, where my career is still in a good spot and I'm having time to do other things outside of it. I've worked for that. And I think it definitely took like several months of me having to kind of tell myself to release myself of that guilt. But at the end of the day too, it's like, what kind of life do you want to live? Do you want to live a balanced life? Okay, you're living the balanced life. Bask in it, like.
This episode is brought to you by Stouffer's. Here comes 3-time juggling champion Natalia Rogers. She's juggling law school, her TA job. Oh, narrowly catches the laundry. What's that fourth ball? Parents unexpectedly showed up at dinner time? Is that too much for Natalia? Not with Stouffer's Chicken Alfredo and its mouth-watering mix of Asiago, Romano, and Parmesan. When you're juggling 4 things at once and the clock strikes dinner, think Stouffer's.
New Year, same extra value meals at McDonald's. So now get 2 snack wraps, plus fries, and a medium soft drink for just $8.
For limited time only. Prices and participation may vary. Prices may be higher in Hawaii, Alaska, and California, and for delivery.
I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like the hardest thing to wrap your head around as a business owner is that it's very hard to build, but it's relatively easy to nurture. However, it's hard to keep the correct mindset when you're in that nurture phase, because it's very easy to feel like the rug is going to be ripped out from underneath you. And I do think this is another one of those things that it's not like you struggle with this or you don't struggle with this. It's kind of something that you need to continue to work at to keep your mindset in the correct place, because at the end of the day, that is why you build a business. It's very hard upfront. You spend a lot of hours upfront for no financial return. However, once you get to a phase where things are starting to snowball, even though it's not going to be passive at that point, it is way easier to nurture what you've built. And yes, you can keep pushing. Yes, you can keep growing. You can keep doing more and more and more. Or you can tell yourself, no, this is what I worked for, and I want to take a balanced approach and enjoy it. This is something that Grace and I were talking about the other day. Just kind of, we love to come onto the podcast and like before we press record, we'll talk for like an hour.
It's so bad. It's just
so
literally
bad.
just like, I know
We
it's good to
waste a
catch
lot.
up as friends, but it's so bad. It's
We
just
should
too
start just
long.
like pressing record
Yeah.
and just letting you guys listen to our conversations, because we literally talk for so long. But we were talking about that the other day, how we don't have to take PTO. Neither of us for our careers, we don't have to take PTO. However, I think we're starting to get to the point where we're like, okay, we both want to be moms. And realistically, I personally don't want to be traveling with young kids. Like, I'm probably going to take a couple years off when I have children from traveling literally anywhere. That just sounds terrible, putting a kid on a plane for a couple years. So it's like, I do feel like now is the time. It's kind of not now or never, but this is why we worked hard to get to where we are, where we don't have to take PTO. And now we should take time to enjoy that. And we were talking like, okay, should we take a trip? We've talked about like those EF trips on here before. Like, should we just book one and go, because we don't have to take PTO? So yeah, I do think that it requires a lot of balance and not allowing yourself to feel lazy for not doing the same amount of output as you did when you were first building your business.
I even think too, even if you don't have a business and you're coming at this from more of a corporate lens where you're like, I have a stable job that provides me an income that allows me to live a life that I love, and I have, you know, good amount of PTO, I get to travel, take time off, I have good work-life balance. How do I deal with not feeling guilty for not using all my waking hours to be building a side business or doing extra, all these things? And something I've thought about a lot last year was the idea of being content in a moment or in a season, because I'm someone who always is like working towards the next thing. Like I hit one goal, I don't even really take time to celebrate it, and I'm just to the next. And it's because I have massive, massive visions for my life and in dreams. However, if you don't learn to be content in each season, and like you're content, you're happy, and you're appreciative for what you have, you know, but you still have dreams and goals and visions, of course. If you don't learn to be content in each season, I think sometimes you end up looking back and you realize that you didn't even enjoy any of the balance or the privileges or the time or experiences that you had in those moments because you were always thinking about the next thing. And so I've thought a lot about that. Like, what does it mean to strive for more and be content at the same time? And I don't have all the answers on that yet. It's still something I'm figuring out, but I try to appreciate where I'm at. And that has helped me too. Like, if I have a good, like, for example, would I love to make $100,000 a month? Yes. But am I there yet? No. Am I going to feel guilty and selfish and lazy and all these bad things about myself if I decide to take a Friday off or just bask in the fact that it's beautiful weather here in Florida and I don't want to be working a ton of hours right now where we have the best weather all year? No. Because it's a season, it's a time where I'm going to enjoy the life that I'm living right now. The goals are still there. I'm still thinking about how I'm going to do those things, but this isn't my season for being like imbalanced and going really hard on that dream. So I don't have the answer for how to be content and strive like perfectly, but that's something that I try to keep top of mind. How can I be content with where I'm at and appreciative for where I'm at while also still knowing I want more?
Yeah, I know never have all the answers. None of us will. It's definitely a practice to, practice being content, and then also being like, no, I still do want more out of life and I want to enjoy working toward them. I don't want to be stressed out working toward them. I want to be doing it because it's fun and I like being an overachiever and I like striving for things, not because I feel this kind of unnecessary pressure to make $100,000 a month or whatever your arbitrary goal is. So yeah, we definitely don't have all the answers, but we don't have to. But that brings us to the end of this month's Q&A, because like I said, we do these on the last Friday of every single month. So if you do have questions that you want us to wrap into these Q&A episodes, you can leave them in the comment section of this episode or in any of our other episodes. If you're listening to something and if we say something and you're like, oh, I want to hear you guys talk about this more, you have a question on it, definitely leave them in any of the episodes in Spotify. We love hearing from you guys, but thanks for tuning into the podcast. And
Your Wish is Your Command is being called the greatest success book of all time, with over 100,000 five-star reviews.
I went from $5,000 on my bank account to $8 million.
My income doubled.
I was able to retire at the age of 31.
It reveals the missing key to the law of attraction. Your Wish is Your Command is now available on Amazon. Search Your Wish is Your Command on Amazon to get your copy today.
until next week.